Step into the sun-baked plains of ancient Sumer, where the whispers of a 5,000-year-old mystery linger among the ruins. Here, in the cradle of civilization, the deity Nishida, lord of the good tree, ruled over verdant orchards and the shadowed underworld, his coiled serpent slithering through rituals of wine and rebirth. Could this Mesopotamian god, with his dual dominion over life and death, hold the primordial blueprint for Dionysus, the Greek deity of ecstasy and resurrection? Pheres of Syros thought so. Nishida's very name echoes Dionysos, god of the tree, a title mirroring Dionysus's mythic roots. Like his Sumerian counterpart, Dionysus would later embody the intoxicating dance of creation and decay, his rites steeped in wine and serpentine symbolism. Yet Nishida was not alone in this cosmic choreography. Beside him stood Dumuzi, the weeping vegetation god, whose annual descent into the underworld mirrored the agonized journey of Dionysus, and whose ritual laments, sung by weeping women under the scorching Mesopotamian sun, would ripple across millennia, even etching themselves into the pages of the Hebrew Bible. Together, these gods wove a tapestry of death and renewal so potent that their echoes would shape the mourning of Adonis, the rebirth of Osiris, and perhaps even the sorrowful psalms of a distant Messiah. What secrets lie buried in this ancient duality of wine, wilderness, and weeping? Let's dig deeper. Dumuzi's mythic arc pulses with uncanny echoes of Dionysus's own saga, a divine paradox of life clawing its way from death's grip. Both gods, bound to the trembling heartbeat of the earth, embody vegetation's fragile dance, lush one season, withered the next. Imagine Dumuzi, the shepherd of the people, dragged screaming into the underworld by gala demons, his demise withering Sumer's fields to dust, only for his lover, Inanna's tears, to resurrect him, coaxing barley from barren soil. Dionysus, too, faced dismemberment by titans, his shattered body sown into the earth like seed, only to rise reborn as the vine that bleeds wine. Enter Nishida, the lord of the good tree, whose serpentine coils twist through this chthonic waltz. As Dumuzi's shadow twin, he guards the gates of the underworld, his roots drinking from both life and decay. Yet the god Damu crystallizes this duality, a hybrid of Nishida's arboreal mystique and Dumuzi's sacrificial agony. He becomes the ultimate syncretic icon, vegetation's tender shoot and its funeral shroud. Picture Damu's mythic tears, wept as sap from wounded trees, mingling with the libations poured for Dionysus at Athenian festivals. These gods aren't just parallels, they're fractal reflections, each iteration of their death and return. Ritual, a fractal leaf on humanity's oldest metaphor, that life, like the grapevine, must be crushed to yield its sweetness. While scholars widely acknowledge Dumuzi's migration to Lebanon and Syria during the Iron Age, molded by Assyrian conquests into the lamented Adon, later Adonis, the roots of his kinship with Dionysus dig far deeper into the fertile soil of Neolithic agrarian cults. Imagine the Phoenician coast where the river Adonis, modern Nar Ibrahim, ran crimson each spring, mythically stained by the blood of the dying god, as women clad in mourning, purple gathered to wail for his descent into the underworld. In Byblos, the very city where Adonis's cult thrived, rituals mirrored Sumerian weeping for Dumuzi ceremonies. Priestesses gashed their cheeks, sowed gardens of Adonis in shallow pots, plants that withered swiftly, symbolizing life's fragile bloom, and cast effigies into the sea, their grief a harbinger of autumn's decay. Meanwhile, on the sacred isle of Delos, Dionysus's devotees enacted their own theater of sorrow. At the god's tomb, a cleft in the earth near the Terrace of the Lions, initiates of the Eleusinian mysteries fasted, danced in frenzied spirals, and poured honeyed wine into the soil, as if feeding the corpse of the god himself. These rites climaxed with the sparagmos, the ritual tearing of a bull, its raw flesh symbolizing Dionysus's dismemberment and rebirth. The parallels to Adonis's cult were no accident. Greek historians like Herodotus noted the tears of Isis for Osiris, another Dionysian twin, flowing into the same rivers of lament that flooded Syria for Adonis. Even the timing aligned. Both gods were mourned at the brittle threshold of seasons, when summer's heat choked the land, and the promise of resurrection hung as thin as a crescent moon. This wasn't mere cultural borrowing. It was the ancient world whispering a universal truth, that life, in all its fleeting glory, demands a God who dies screaming, only to rise again with the first shoots of spring. Dionysus and Adonis, though separated by seas and epochs, were two faces of this primal rhythm, their shared DNA etched in the tears of mourners and the ferment of wine. The ritual mourning of Dionysus finds striking parallels in the lamentations for other deities, such as Osiris, Ashman, and Attis, practices that may have laid the groundwork for later traditions like the mourning of Jesus. Remarkably, the Sumerians themselves performed formalized grieving rites for Dumuzi and Nashida. Dumuzi, for instance, was mourned by Inanna, later Ishtar, and the ritualized weeping for Dumuzi even appears in the Hebrew Bible. The prophet Ezekiel references this practice vividly. Then he brought me to the door of the gate of the Lord's house, which was toward the north. And behold, there sat women weeping for Tammuz, Dumuzi. Ezekiel 8:14. This lamentation tradition extended beyond Mesopotamia. A poetic dirge titled In the Desert by the Early Grass explicitly mourns both Ningishzida and Dumuzi, binding their narratives together through shared themes of loss and cyclical renewal. Astrological texts further blur the lines between these deities, with some lamentations equating Nashida and Dumuzi as interchangeable entities, a reflection of their overlapping roles as chthonic beings tied to the underworld. Their connection deepens in the Epic of Gilgamesh and the Middle Babylonian narrative of Adapa. In the latter, Nashida is portrayed as one of two divine guardians at the gates of Anu's celestial realm, standing alongside Dumuzi. This shared guardianship hints at a mythological duality. Though distinct, their fates intertwine. The text implies that after their symbolic deaths, both deities ascend to a shared eternal role in the heavens, their identities merging into a singular archetype of resurrection and divine guardianship. This celestial arrangement suggests that Nashida and Dumuzi may not have been confined solely to the underworld, but instead alternated between realms, descending and ascending in a cyclical dance. Traditional beliefs held that both deities vanished annually between midsummer and midwinter, their absences marking shifts in the natural world. This duality mirrors the relationship between Dionysus and Apollo in Greek myth, where opposing forces harmonize to govern the rhythms of life and seasons. Intriguingly, Attic calendars from classical Athens depict Apollo and Dionysus as divine stewards of the two primary seasons. According to these traditions, after the harvest, Apollo would depart northward to the mythic Hyperboreans, where his celestial music was said to conjure the shimmering aurora borealis during winter's darkness. Meanwhile, Dionysus would ascend from the underworld to preside over the frost-laden months, bringing merriment, wine, and revelry to offset winter's gloom. Come spring, Dionysus's symbolic death and sacrificial rebirth catalyzed the earth's fertility, prompting crops to surge forth. Apollo then reclaimed his celestial throne, bathing the summer in sunlight until the harvest cycle began anew. Harvard philologist Carl A.P. Ruck expands this duality, proposing that Dionysus and Apollo are not rivals but complementary aspects of a single divine force. He observes that the two gods are never depicted together in classical art or myth, yet their narratives intertwine inseparably. Apollo's rationality and order balance Dionysus's chaos and ecstasy, embodying the dualities of civilization and wilderness, restraint and abandon. Together they form a holistic representation of the natural and spiritual worlds, a duality echoed in the earlier Sumerian interplay between Nishida and Dumuzi. Dionysus, hailed as the prince of Zeus and mediator between gods and mortals, embodies a duality akin to Mithra, a deity simultaneously chthonic and solar in Zoroastrian tradition, who bridges Ahura Mazda and humanity. Dionysus symbolizes liberation of the soul from within, a raw, earthbound catharsis, while Apollo delivers celestial justice from above, a divine mandate rooted in cosmic order. Dionysus reigns as the god of inspiration, freedom, equality, and the arts, music, revelry, moisture, metamorphosis, and the lush growth of vegetation. His domain spills into wine, ecstasy, passion, instinct, emotion, death, resurrection, salvation, and eternal life. Chthonic and shadowy, he is Apollo's antithesis, Apollo, god of light, sky, order, rationality, piety, justice, hierarchy, composure, sobriety, logic, purity, and prophecy, governs unyielding fate. Yet both share ties to art and music, though of opposing kinds. Apollo's music, structured, harmonious, and akin to a classical orchestra, reflects his ideals of precision and control. Dionysus's dithyramb, by contrast, is wild, abstract, and poetic, a frenetic accompaniment to dance and ecstatic celebration. To borrow a modern analogy, Apollo's compositions echo the disciplined symphony, while Dionysus's rhythms pulse with the raw energy of gangster rap or the chaotic beats of dubstep. Carl A.P. Ruck's analysis deepens this duality. Apollo epitomizes individual responsibility, where one's lot is decreed by celestial hierarchy. Dionysus, however, dissolves boundaries, urging surrender to instinct and collective euphoria. Together they form a cosmic balance. Apollo's unwavering order tempers Dionysus's primal chaos, much like the Sumerian Nishida and Dumuzi cyclically trade realms. This interplay of light and dark, structure and abandon, reflects humanity's eternal negotiation between discipline and desire, fate and freedom. Dionysus emerges as the embodiment of collective responsibility, liberating slaves through inspiration and radical equality. Both Dionysus and Apollo, though stark opposites, share divine lineage as sons of Zeus, each governing distinct realms. Dionysus is tethered to the underworld and the fertile moisture that nourishes crops from beneath the soil, while Apollo commands the heavens, his celestial light bathing the earth from above. Athenian calendars formalized this duality, dedicating half the year to Apollo as Lord of the Light and Lightbringer, ruling the dry, sun-scorched 6 months of summer. Dionysus, in turn, presided as Lord of the Harvest over the cold, wet, and dark seasons, his influence seeping into the earth's dormant vitality. Friedrich Nietzsche's The Birth of Tragedy masterfully dissects this symbiotic relationship. He likens the gods to a cosmic yin and yang, their primordial unity, Dionysian frenzy harmonizing with Apollonian order, creates the psychological conditions necessary for tragedy to flourish. For Nietzsche, life itself is a tragedy. In this state, he writes, one enriches everything out of one's own fullness. Whatever one sees, whatever one wills, is swelled, taut, strong, overloaded with strength. A man in this state transforms things until they mirror his power, until they are reflections of his perfection. Music, this transformative power blurs the line between suffering and ecstasy, destruction and creation. Dionysus, with his chaotic vitality, and Apollo, with his structured idealism, together forge the tension that fuels art, myth, and the human experience itself. Having to transform into perfection is art, Nietzsche, NEI, declares in Birth of Tragedy. He lauds the works of Pindar, Aeschylus, Sicca, and Sophocles as the pinnacle of artistic expression embodying tragedy's raw essence. Yet Nietzsche disputes the encroachment of Socratic rationalism, arguing that ethics and reason dilute tragedy's core, the fragile equilibrium between the Dionysian, Dianan, and Apollonian, Apolloni forces. This prioritization of reason, perpetuated by Plato's dialogues, steers modernity toward logic at the expense of primal artistic energies. Nietzsche, NII, extends this critique to Christianity, labeling it Platonism for the people, a symptom of Western culture's divorce from the artistic, tragic worldview of antiquity. He casts Saturn, the Dionysian archetype, as a symbol of demonic annihilation, conflating it with the devil, or Antichrist. For Nietzsche, Saturn embodies the horror of individuality's dissolution, yet paradoxically revels in its destruction, representing pure liberation and freedom of expression. The dichotomy between Osiris and Set, both sons of Ammon, mirrors the Apollonian-Dionysian duality. Set, god of aridity and desert sands, reigns over the scorching summer, while Osiris, the chthonic deity of moisture, vegetation, and darkness, governs the underworld's fertile mysteries. In Egypt, the speculative link between Dionysus and Osiris dissolves entirely. Greeks and Egyptians agreed that these gods were one and the same. Herodotus underscores this syncretism in Book 2 of the Histories, for no gods are worshipped by all Egyptians in common except Isis and Osiris, who, they say, is Dionysus. These are worshipped by all alike. Osiris is, in the Greek language, Dionysus,